So it turns out that Bernie Sanders is very, very popular around the world, next to like Zelensky and the Pope. So Ben Shapiro therefore has to jump in and explain this with his fourth grade definition of socialism, which is when the government does stuff, right? This whole rant is just very, very entertaining. He's so out of touch. He's like, his whole community is going to turn against him pretty soon.
The biggest sort of luxury belief held by a huge number of Americans remains socialism. There are a bunch of Americans who are still in love with the idea of socialism because it seems to solve all of their problems, both emotional and financial. The idea is that if you're not doing well in American society, it must be somebody else's fault. There's a giant conspiracy that can only be cured by handing over to a cadre of an unbelievably powerful people in government control over everybody's life. This is always a temptation. I point this out because the right is looking at the left and they're riding high because they're looking at the Democrats and they're saying, you guys are really, really unpopular. There are some problems. There are some problems here. This is why I've been saying, I'm going to keep saying it. If the economy...
No. He has this all backwards. All the Republican polling is turning around. Like, this is the worst 100-day polling that we've ever seen. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Zohran Mamdani, these are more popular than we ever could have imagined. Right? I just want to get into his explanation of socialism, but like, people wanting the government to give them things is the whole point of government. Government gives us rights, gives us free speech, gives us Second Amendment, unfortunately, gives us due process, gives us different states that we can live in, right? Government does all that, gives us, roads, gives us a border, gives us milk. Like, the point of the government is to give you stuff. That's not what socialism is. Socialism actually, ejects the government. It is about the contract between the employer and the employee. That's what socialism is about. That's why I disagree with it. I would focus on a more government-oriented approach, right? Socialism, ejects the government. It says the big problem here is the contract between the employer and the employee. I say the better solution is to develop strong relationships between the employer and the government, and also a strong relationship between the employee and the government, and then have as much regulation as we need, just to make sure that the contract isn't completely abysmal. Like, you're not contracting yourself out for slavery, or that you can actually consent, right? Those are the important things. But, that's what the only time socialism was really proposed was Bernie Sanders in 2020, when he mandated that publicly traded companies, give part of the company to their employees over a period of time. And I would be against that. I don't think that serves a public purpose in any large amount, relative to the amount of social commotion that would create.
Goes south, this country is in serious, serious trouble. Not because we can't survive a recession, we have before and we will again, but because if our economy goes south, there will be a vast turn toward the socialistic left. And here I point to a Gallup poll that came out August 5th. Among 14 prominent U.S. and global figures, the most positive image held by anybody is Pope Leo, which, of course, not a giant shock. He's a religious figure. And then number 2 is Vladimir Zelensky, who continues to hold a 52% favorable rating. And
I listened to this poll. It's like AOC and Bernie Sanders. I'm surprised Zelensky's on that low, to be honest. It should be a lot higher, but let's keep
34% unfavorable rating. But third on that list is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has a 49% favorable rating, a 38% unfavorable rating, with 14% of Americans saying they have no opinion of Bernie Sanders. And who comes in number 5 on the list? Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. 34% favorable, 38% unfavorable, 28% no opinion. That puts her at -4. That means that her approval ratings are better by the spread than J.D. Vance, who comes in at 38% positive, 49% negative. Comes in hotter than Donald.
Because the right wing is shifting on Israel. That's the main thing. So those centrists are seeing what's happening in Israel, and they're seeing Lindsey Graham defend every bit of it, Huckabee defend every bit of it, and say, you know what, AOC and Bernie Sanders are better than these people. They're actually promising us a populist agenda that works. They're not going to raise our wages by expelling these kind of low class workers that have a different skin color than me to a different country, or by putting on tariffs that are going to magically raise my wages, which has never been proven ever by any econometric study. They're actually going to do it in a way that it's going to work. And I don't agree with all their policies. I think rent control is an okay policy, but it's not good, right? It's not ideal. It's a zero-sum game, essentially. I don't like the whole plan of, unionization and the minimum wage being the economic future of America, and we have to constantly uphold those institutions, right? There's much better ways to go about this, but it's way better than tariffs, which are regressive, and deporting people to countries that are not on their removal orders, where they aren't even given a convention against torture screening or an asylum credible fear interview or a screening for protection against removal, right? That's a disaster, and you won't even see it in your wages. In fact, there's going to be a shortage of workers. 50% of those workers in agriculture are undocumented, so that's going to have a negative effect on you, right? You're not going to do that job. The labor market, maybe couldn't replace that job. Who knows? But it's just a disaster. And these people are looking at AOC, Bernie Sanders. They're not lobbying for this foreign government, foreign country that's doing stuff that I don't like. That any human can look on the news and say I don't like a 3-month starvation campaign. And they also seem to have my best interests at heart. So the word socialism doesn't sound so bad anymore. Like Tucker Carlson has taken a liking to it. And this is just people not knowing what socialism means. Socialism has just become when government does stuff. So that's just what I'm using it as a word, and I hate it. We should just say like capitalism, financial capitalism with an appropriate amount of government intervention. That's more accurate. But it is what it is. Shoot. All right.
Trump, 41% positive, 57% negative. Marco Rubio, 31% positive, 47% negative. And Elon, who has the worst of any of the public figures, 33% positive, 61% negative. And this is a problem because Bernie Sanders has stood outside the two-party system shouting socialist nostrums his entire career. He is a career useless person, a leech on the ass of American society. And yet he is somehow seen as a widely admired figure in America. And this bodes...
It's because he's honest. Like, I don't like Bernie Sanders. I don't know much about his history, but I think he was too much of a shill, probably for the Soviet Union. Back in the day, he opposed the Kosovo intervention in the 90s, which I support by a long shot, right? And so he has done questionable things in the past, but his economic plans aren't bad, and he could probably listen to some smarter people on the left who have better economic plans than literal socialism and make a shift to those. I think that's more feasible, and whatever he implements is better than what we currently have.
It bodes very, very ill. So one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders remains popular is because he stands outside the two-party system, getting nothing done but shouting extremely simple bumper slogans. And I think that is the thing that people are attracted to in Bernie, is that Bernie is a purist. He never actually has to come down to earth to make policy. Instead, he just stands there saying that rich people are rich not because they provide a good service or product to anybody who wants it, but because they are greedy. That the reason that some are succeeding and others are failing is because the system is rigged against you and the parties themselves are rigged against you. And this is a very convenient stance for somebody in electoral office to take because it means nothing is ever his fault. He's not had to change a single thing in American public life. He just gets to stand there shouting at the system. Well, the problem right now for the country is that if the system then fails...
You think Bernie Sanders wouldn't write policy? What? You think he's not doing his job in Congress? Is that your complaint? Do you want him to have more political control so he can do his job? And it's not just Republicans writing up legislation right now? Is that what you want? Do you want him to be president so he can do even more? So he can sign the bills into law? Then he'd be doing a lot of work then. They need to actually be signing the bills into law. Right? Maybe Ben Shapiro would be happier then.
In some way, people tend to turn to the guy who is shouting at the system from the outside. When I've talked about the Zoran Mamdanification of the Democratic Party, understand that is not Zoran Mamdani's shtick. Okay, Zoran Mamdani is second gen. He is just Bernie 2.0, but more ethnically diverse. The same thing is true of AOC. Bernie is the kingmaker in this space. And he continues to ride very high, which is why the economy best not fall down. So over the course of the past couple of days, he's doing a lot of TV. And he suggests, for example...
When has he not ridden high? People love him. Joe Rogan loved him. And everyone loves him because his explanation of stuff makes him sound pretty moderate. His explanation of stuff, like when he goes on Joe Rogan and says, well, we have this social program called Medicare, and it is very, very important for people 65 and over. So, why don't we expand it downwards from 65 to 55 to 45 to 35, all the way down to Medicare for all? And it's like, wow, that makes sense. That sounds like public policy. That sounds like just like the government gives us a right to free speech and due process and roads and sometimes like broadband and regulation and housing code and, traffic laws, right? And the police, they're going to also make sure that we're not, dying on the streets. Like, whoa. Like, are people just gonna abuse this? Like, sit at home and playing video games saying, oh, well, I have Medicare for all. Why do I need to go out and work? It's like, no, this is about running a civil society, right? And anyone would agree that, health, we have to take care of people somehow. So we can do it by hospitals, taking on uninsured patients that they have to treat anyways, but they can, give minimal treatment to, and then raise the prices so that other people have higher premiums to cover that loss. We can do it that way, or we can do it Medicare for all way, which is like a 3% administrative cost, right? Relative to private insurances, 15 to 20%, right? Why is that? Private insurance has to do all the fancy calculations to make sure that they're profitable, which is a net loss economic wise. Like, why are all these people like worrying about if this insurance system is profitable when everyone has to get healthcare anyways, right? No one doubts the utility of healthcare. That's why stuff has a price, because we're trying to measure its utility. That's why people bearing the financial cost for their own healthcare is irrelevant, because we all agree they should get it anyways, right? And they do. It's just, do they have to sell their house or not? Do they have to take on like 6 figures of medical debt or not? Do they have to get substandard treatment or not? Do other people have to pay for it in their premiums or not? That's what we're trying to, like, that's the hole we're trying to fill here.
The real problem, the reason that Kamala Harris lost, is because she was influenced by wealthy people.
You'd said something pretty tough when you were speaking to this crowd about Kamala Harris.
One of the reasons, in my view, that Kamala Harris lost this election is she had too many billionaires telling her not to speak up for the working class of this country.
Ouch.
No, she backed down on the wealth tax, which I'm not in favor of. The wealth tax, it would bring very, very little public utility, right? I don't care if you pass a wealth tax. It's just like, make sure you write it well so it doesn't screw like medium-sized business owners. Then they'd have to like liquidate some of their business that is, not liquid. It's like, write it well. If you write it well, then sure, just add to their tax liability. Rather you just raise the income tax or the capital gains tax or whatever, or land tax or whatever. Like, I don't care. And it's fine if she wants to. I think it was a good decision for her to back down on the wealth tax, because at least that was a strategic play to like get the CNBCers like kind of more on her side. She has to appeal to some of the finance bros, like just a little bit, because like people like Kevin O'Leary were crusading how it was going to destroy America, and if it's written poorly, it could really do some bad stuff. But if it's written well, then of course it wouldn't do any bad things. So there's kind of that ambiguity there.
Well, no, I don't think that's. I like Kamala. She's a friend of mine, but her core consultants, were heavily influenced by very wealthy people. How do you run for president and not develop a strong agenda which speaks to the economic crises facing working families?
Again, so convenient for him. So convenient for him. He wasn't the nominee. And Kamala Harris, again, I think Kamala's awful. But the reason she didn't go full socialist is because she would have lost by more if she had gone full socialist. But Bernie can sit there and say that the reason that she didn't is because the billionaires bullied her into it or something. And then, of course, he says the government is run by extremely...
How do you know that? Like, define socialism. Like, what? How is the Doge dividend not socialism? Right? Is Elon Musk now a socialist? Like, is Trump a socialist? I mean, Trump gave out relief after COVID. Does that make him a socialist? Like, what is a socialist here? What do you mean full socialist? Everyone's a socialist to some extent. I mean, by your definition, I think nobody's a socialist. It's kind of like no true Scotsman fallacy, you can say, but I don't think anyone's really a socialist besides, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders in part in his 2020 legislative proposals. But
greedy people.
Do you think that in America, with all of our genius, all of our capabilities, we spending so much money cannot provide a high-quality system that guarantees health care to all people? And do you think people here don't know that? They know it. They know we can do it. Throughout Europe and other countries, you don't have to leave college $50,000, $100,000 in debt or $500,000 in debt if you're going to medical school. That makes zero sense at all. Look, let's be clear, and the message of tonight and what I will continue to give. You have a government today that is run by the wealthiest people in this country. They are extremely greedy people. They want it all, and we've got to stand up to them.
Okay, so again, this shtick, it's ridiculous on its face. The fact is that the government sucks money out of the pockets of Americans at an exorbitant rate, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars every single year. He says that he wants to live like a person in Italy. Well, he can start by getting rid of his air conditioning in his lake house. Right? That's where he can start. It won't end there, by the way. He can also give up...
What's the reference there? Is there no lakeside property in Italy? I know that they have stricter First Amendment protections. I mean, less First Amendment protections, which, sometimes I wish we had, but not to the extent Italy has. But that's definitely true. Like, hate speech has they're more dialed in there on hate speech, but it's not as extreme as he's making it sound.
Liberties, First Amendment rights, and all the rest. Get to more on this in just a moment. First, who knows you better than yourself, your family, your friends? Well, if you own any internet-connected device, well, there are thousands of companies that might know you better than you know yourself. They're called data brokers. They make billions tracking everything you do online, every purchase, every location, every conversation, your most personal beliefs, all packaged into a profile they sell to market. Undergirds the Bernie movement. What undergirds the Bernie movement is a seething hatred of the United States, a seething hatred of the West, a belief that the West is somehow morally inferior to other parts of the world. This is why I've said for a while.
I don't understand this. Why? Where do you get that from? Saying we are a rich Western country, we can provide this service that we know increases people's lifespans, quality of life, cortisol, for all-cause mortality. Like we can go down the line. This is very, very beneficial, and we're a rich country. We're not gonna, we can afford it, to the extent that word even applies to government. There's no reason why we shouldn't implement like a public option at least. Like, what do you mean? This is anti-West.
People on the right who say, how could Zoran Mamdani win despite being radically anti-Semitic? The answer is he won because he's radically anti-Semitic. That is the reason.
He got the most of the Jewish vote, by the way. That's unfortunate for Ben Shapiro. Like, I don't know how that happened. He got most of the Jewish vote because your biggest evidence for anti-Semitism said he won't visit Israel as the New York mayor, and also that he won't specifically condemn the use of the word intifada. Yeah, I made a video about that in the past. That's kind of absurd as well. I won't get into it now, but...
The left-wing base of the Democratic Party is totally happy to do the third world thing. It is their favorite thing. Bernie Sanders is the kind of person, again...
It's third world to have a public option for healthcare. Great logic. I don't know what kind of healthcare system these third world countries actually have. That would be an interesting thing to research. Like, for third world countries, what is their healthcare like? I don't really know. Is that what Bernie Sanders is advocating for? Like, do these third world countries have good healthcare? They probably have more of a private system because their government Like a lot of them are in some kind of civil war or something. So I don't really know. Like the country's in the worst case. Like they probably don't even have any healthcare infrastructure. I don't know.
He remains extremely popular with Americans, broadly speaking, because he represents a sort of fantasy version of politics where you snap your fingers and magically everybody has a third car and it's a Ferrari. But he also...
Everybody has a public option and now you don't die and before getting 6 figures in medical debt. Right? This is a massive straw man. Like, what? It's just hilarious. Like, you can make a better argument for education, that education you should bear the financial cost for, and I do think that's correct for some degrees. For degrees that unequivocally benefit the public purpose, like medicine, we'd have to have a department of government dedicated to that called the Department of Education to deciding which degrees people should bear financial costs for. Like, definitely medicine, nursing. Obviously, you shouldn't bear financial costs for those if you want to go in those fields. Russian pottery or, line dancing, like obviously you should have to buy those. But we'd have to have a board of people deciding what's useful and what's not. And that's how I think we should work this out.
Suggests a system wherein the reason some people win and some people lose is not because some people make better decisions than others. It is because there is some sort of overarching conspiratorial system designed to harm other people.
But people can win and lose in society insofar as, you can't like go on vacation every month in retirement. And that's losing, right? Your losing shouldn't be dying on the street of cancer because you don't have any insurance. That's not losing. Or it shouldn't be like, oh, you can't become an engineer or doctor because you don't want to pay the money even though you have the intelligence for it, or you have the wit, or you have the stomach for it, the ability to study that kind of information well, right? Those people should absolutely have no financial barrier.
New book coming out called Lions and Scavengers. He is a pure example of a scavenger. He has not produced a single thing of value in his entire life, and the man is in his 80s. He's a career useless person. But he's
produced a lot of people in America who happen to support him. He spends a lot of time advocating for stuff in a way that other senators don't.
Entire life has been dedicated to wrecking the systems that have granted him fame and fortune. He's the kind of person who believes that Hamas...
So the systems that have granted him fame and fortune are democracy. Pretty sure he's not the one wrecking democracy. Like, did Bernie Sanders try an insurrection? I don't think so. Yeah. What did I hear? Did I just hear him bring up Hamas?
The terrorist group that has been stealing something like 90% of all trucks the UN ships in.
All right. It's time to end the video here. 90%. So, first of all, Ben Shapiro takes like the 88%, rounds it up to 90%. And then that is all intercepted envoys. And now we're talking about Gaza for no reason. All intercepted envoys for any reason, anywhere in the Gaza Strip by any person, any entity, be they unarmed or not, or an unaffiliated gang from Hamas. That is a total figure. So the 90% figure, UN said, a lot of it's civilians, right? And from the USAID analysis, only 22%, I think it was like 30-something out of 150-something of the interceptions that they studied, were armed actors. They were all by, most of these are by Kareem Shalom, where all the aid is going through. So the aid first starts in Israeli-controlled zones, then it makes its way to Hamas zones. It doesn't even make it to Hamas zones because it's intercepted by either civilians who are hungry in those zones, who are ventured out of Al-Mawasi and trying to get food because they're hungry, or it's gangs like the Popular Forces or Abu Shabaab, which are propped up with the IDF in order to oppose Hamas militarily, endogenously within Gaza, right? They steal aid too. So like Hamas isn't even there. Like, just to be clear, Hamas, they aren't stealing 98 envoys as the Popular Forces did outside of Kareem Shalom, right? Hamas is more in the Gaza City area and near the refugee camps. So they're not even close to the aid. And if they were, then guess what? Israel has a clear shot to destroy a Hamas militant, and they don't have to kill 10 preschoolers, like little boys and girls, in order to kill that Hamas militant. So that's that would be good warfare if they actually like tried to steal the trucks. Like, there you go. You have Hamas militants that you can kill without having to kill, innocent civilians. So I don't know. He just completely lied there. That's a complete lie. There's no evidence that all 90% of those, 88%, was Hamas. It's mostly civilians and other gangs. A lot of them are unarmed, and no one has found any positive evidence of Hamas. IDF people come out saying we don't have evidence of a coordinated Hamas plan. Hamas might go around the refugee camps with a gun, say, hey, give me some aid. Like, Hamas isn't starving, right? They're obviously eating. They have to eat somehow. They probably steal some aid, but they don't make it this big enterprise and starve everyone in Gaza, right? Hamas wants to be somewhat popular. They worry about their PR just like Israel does too.